welcome back to another episode of VR Graffiti. We had a really great comment from Trent Reed. He asked if I could run you guys through some ways, some techniques of doing 3D effects. So here I have 3 different scenarios set up: a throwie, a bomb, and a piece. And I'm gonna show you guys exactly how to do dimensions for each different scenario. Along the way, we're gonna level up. Let's have fun, let's jump into it. So for this first one here, it's just a basic throwie, as you can see. And I actually forgot to do the eye of the A. Throwies are really simple. These are really literally meant to just be throw it, something you could throw up in maybe 2 to 5 minutes. So we can see that our letter has this round sort of tip at the top. So if we grab our color and actually sort of like repeat that round shape like this, it kind of gives us more of that drop shadow effect. 2 keys when doing this is that you want your drop shadow to end to sort of cap off a little shorter than the actual outline. Let's do that all around and I'll show you guys the after effects. Right here, we're gonna repeat this shape of our A. You wanna repeat it a little lower to give that drop shadow. And lastly, the main part of our A. So I'm actually gonna repeat a circle right around the left side of this A, and that'll give us a nice drop shadow effect. The A started to curve down. For the dimension, I popped it back up right here, and coming down, I have this going back up where it would go back up over here. And what we're gonna do to really pop our letter off the wall is put a nice little outer outline. All right, these are some crazy players. So that's it for our dimensions for a throwie. So now let's move on. All right, so here I have more of like a bomb letter. Obviously you could tell the huge difference between a throwie and a bomb. These dimensions are gonna get a little bit more complex, and I'll show you exactly how I like to do my dimensions. In some places, I'm gonna do like a drop shadow dimension, and in other places, the dimension will come straight off the letter. We want to imagine this vanishing point for this letter is probably, let's say, somewhere right about here. And we're gonna make the top of our letter hit that point, and like the bottom of our letter come to this vanishing point. And that's gonna give the right perspective for our letter. If you're a beginner, this is gonna help you tremendously. And as you move along and get better, you'll be able to just visualize it and do it all mentally. And I'm gonna do sort of like a drop shadow effect dimension where I'm gonna go like that. Keeping in mind, I want my vanishing point, I want it to line up somewhere around there. Right here, instead of doing a drop shadow, I'm just gonna drop it from the letter itself. So that dimension's coming from the letter. Here, the dimension is like a drop shadow. Here, the dimension's coming from this letter. So now we're gonna do a dimension right here. Instead of a drop shadow here, I'm actually gonna have the dimension come off the letter. I want it to look like my letter's coming from the side. My vanishing points are actually kind of lining up with my dimensions. The top of this line you can see would lead right around there. And maybe, I guess this one maybe not too much. So we're almost done with this one. What I'm gonna do next is actually outline my dimensions and add some extra line weights to give more of that movement. just love playing this game and love doing graffiti. I get so stoked on seeing beautiful pieces come together. I love it, even if they're not my own. I added this line here just to really separate the parts of the dimension. And as you're gonna see, I'm gonna go along this piece and connect the corners. We got our dimension outline. As you can see, it makes a huge difference when you outline your dimension. The next thing I'm gonna do is add some connecting points between the corners of the letters and the dimension just to have that continuity. I'm gonna add some extra line weights, some thicks and thins in the dimensions to show like the visual effect of movement. So because we have like a thick line here and here for our outline, I like to follow these up with a thin outline, with a thin line there and a thin line here. And these lines are actually meant to be in perspective of our vanishing point. And I would just add maybe one more thin line and one more thick line. Simplicity is key. You don't want to overwhelm it with these lines. When I first started doing graffiti and learning these techniques, I would overdo it with these lines. Less is more. So remember to take that approach when you're adding lines in your dimensions. Ooh, this is a challenging part. It's gonna get challenging. It really is. In certain parts of your letters, it's gonna get hard to get that perspective right for your dimensions. But don't get discouraged, just keep practicing. And remember that not everyone's perfect right when they start. Keep trying new things, that's the key. All right, much better. So because it's a thick line, I like to follow it up with a thin line and just only do that on one side. Don't put another thin line here. And I wanna keep this a little bit more simple, so I think I'll just add one more thin line here, and that's about it. I like to kick these off again, so I have a thick line here, so I'll put a thin line, and I'll put a thin line here, and a nice thick line there, just to really break it up. Then all I'm left with I guess like empty space is these two chunks. Those get really easy to separate with either half lines. A half line looks like this. Forward, we have a thick line here. Oops, wrong color. Sometimes these mistakes could actually be good things. Let me try to see if I could actually make this into a highlight of the piece. Someone asked me, how do you fix mistakes in graffiti? We could make our mistakes into like the most coolest parts of our pieces. A lot of times in real life, people will always ask, oh, how'd you get those thin lines? How is this guy getting those super thin lines? Sometimes I don't even know, hey, it was an accident. That's happened a lot to me in the past. So let's keep going. So we have a thin line here. So let's see how this looks. So we're gonna connect our letters to our dimension, the corners. So I'm gonna have a half line coming from here to go halfway through this space. And I'll have a half line coming from here, kind of like meeting it halfway. I actually think that was the best solution for that spot. It was such a weird angle. So even sometimes having the little space in between, it's enough to satisfy the eye that it's not overwhelming. Two thin lines here just to break up this space. I'm gonna add one more thin line right here, and I think that'll actually finish it off. That line is throwing me off. When I was starting up, like that's the mistake I would always make, like, all right, all these lines look consistent, like they're going the right direction to the vanishing point, but this one is just completely off. If we were to follow this line, this doesn't end up near our vanishing point. And all of the rest of these sort of seem to be working out just fine. So what I'm gonna do is fix this area, And as you can see, if I make this go towards here, it's gonna look a lot better. So what I'm gonna do is just use what I have as best as I could to fix that area. I really wanna make this a thick line right here. And that feels a lot better to me. So there we have it with that. Now let's move on to the piece dimensions.